Hello, welcome to Ruckus and Rucksacks. My name's Danny. I'm joined today with my buddy Steve, aka Steve the Vegan. How you going today, bud?
Doing great.
Thanks
for having me.
So stoked about life. Excellent. And this is my friend Stephanie, aka Fish.
Yo.
Yo. You're not going to come up with anything more sparkling than that, just yo.
Is my personality really sparkling to you?
Not today.
This probably isn't going to be recorded anyway.
In my defense, there was a couple of technical difficulties.
It's true.
The point of this is not to give you any details about where to go, how to get from one place or another. It's more to give you inspiration in terms of stories that happened to people as they've been traveling. So, however, I would like to start today with a bit of a quote that I found.
This quote comes from Paul Bowles from The Sheltering Sky. Whereas the tourist generally hurries back home at the end of a few weeks or months, the traveler belonging no more to one place than to the next moves slowly over periods of years, from one part of the earth to another. Indeed, he would have found it difficult to tell, among the many places he had lived, precisely where it was he had felt most at home.
I think that was a good quote to start with because, how do we put this? We're all perpetual travelers. We all currently reside in China. So I'm from New Zealand, and my guests today are both Americans.
I wouldn't necessarily call myself American. That's something I've always taken issue with here. And that might be a good topic for how I feel about this quote, because I think the more you travel outside of the country you were born in, the less you tend to identify with that one place, like they say here. So when people ask me where I'm from, and I say I'm from China, people look at me disapprovingly,
But this happens all the time where, we're biking around Shenzhen, and then it'd be a cute little kid being like, "Oh, Weigoren. And, we reply, "Bushu, woman, Zhongguoren."
Yeah. You're going to need to translate
Which
that.
we may need to translate that.
Yeah. Weigoren would be an outside country person or foreigner. It's something that most children 3 years old and older are able to use. If you want to say you're a local person, it could be a Dang Diren. I might say I'm from China or Zhongguoren, but I never tell people I'm American. I don't plan to continue.
Yeah, I mean, I always feel kind of guilty saying it, but I really don't feel any pull back to America at all. It's more like it feel like going backwards, I think, at this point.
No, I mean, I do definitely appreciate that. I'm really proud to be a New Zealander myself. I've got a couple of New Zealand tattoos on me. I can speak a little bit of Māori. But I know that there's nothing great for me in New Zealand. To me, it's like living in New Zealand is like being under a blanket. It's warm, it's safe, it's comfortable, but it's never exciting. It's never more than what it is. So I don't know. It's nice to go back and visit. It's nice to sit on a beach and drink some beer with some friends and go to some beautiful places. But to be completely honest, most of the time I get a vacation day. I'm like, nah, man. I'm going off to the deserts of Morocco. I'm gonna go all Bedouin in the deserts of the Sahara.
Well, it's also, for me, it's a different perspective. I think a lot of countries, when you're born and you're raised in that country, you have that one viewpoint. So there's a perspective you gain from living outside of your home country that it makes some of the decisions that you see your home country making kind of hard to deal with, or you want to roll your eyes or something about it because it feels so short-sighted, I guess. You're getting so many different perspectives now that it's hard to understand.
Yeah, I mean, I totally get that. And the strange thing is, it's For some people, when they move and they live in another country, and I saw this recently. I saw a friend of mine in the UK, and the difference between her home country and the place that she was living was a burden to her. It was very hard for her to deal with, and it was something that she was always living with every moment of every day. Except, people like us that are like been here and been living in Korea and different parts of the world for a long time. It's not like we celebrate the wonderful moments that can happen because we live in this country.
Yeah.
I know this may sound silly, but I like having home cooked meals, and when you can get an IE to come in, IE meaning an auntie, to come in and she'll help tidy up your place, and then if you give her some food, she'll cook for you, and it'll be the most amazing food that you've ever had.
And you have no idea what it's called.
You have no idea what it's called. No idea. It's wonderful colours.
Oh, it's so pretty.
What would you say is like the most important thing to you when you're living in a new country, like to make you feel accepted or appreciated?
Honestly, man, just kindness. And I know it may sound really strange, but what's really lovely for me at the moment is I'm a kids teacher, and all of my kids run up to me and they're always like, "Lao Shu Danny, Lao Shu Danny, Teacher Danny," and they run up and they give me hugs, and there's so much love there, and my workmates are really cool, and there's not a moment, there's not a day that goes past where someone doesn't give me a hug. And it could be someone from another country, it could be someone who's a local. There's always someone there, and so having that consistently there sort of reaffirms your decision that you can live in another place. What about you, bro?
Very similar experience. I mean, I kind of fell out of favor with the United States, and that prompted me to look for work elsewhere. When I moved to Korea, it was more out of necessity than desire. I wanted a full-time job. I wanted to get paid. I wanted to be able to, progress. I'd never taught before. I was happy that I could do it, but I never really felt connected to Korea. But in China, it's been a very different story. I've had a very positive work experience. I think you both could attest to that. Working at a kids and teens school in Chinese city is a great opportunity. And I felt very close to my students and my coworkers, and it makes it feel like home. And sometimes it makes me think a bit more about my next traveling adventure, how I'd like that to be similar to this in some ways.
And no, I get it. There was something about the formalness of Korea that made it a little hard to connect to. Mm. And here, I will admit, our work is not formal at all. It's a constant string of jokes and comments and goofing off and sticking googly eyes on random things.
I had a kid called Doris come in the other day, and so she shows up and she's proud as punch because she's got this bright purple teddy bear. And so I ended up getting some electrical tape and taping it around to the front of me, and so it was my Joey for the day, and I ended up using it to teach the kids. It was ridiculous.
Your kids are ridiculous.
I mean, in my defense, I don't know, they've all got personalities. I just want them just to enjoy as much as they possibly can. And I mean, they feel all of my kids feel very comfortable with me, which is, it's wonderful. But on the same side, when anyone covers my classes, they always hate it.
No, I mean, you can, you not know what class you're covering, which one you're walking into. And it's not even, maybe he's there that day, but it's his co-teacher that's gone. And you walk into a class and, let's see, one of the teachers is and the kid, I was working on the board and told the kid to come up to the board, and he slid home to get to the board. Danny class. I had a kid basically running around and screaming, and Danny class. And I had, what team name do you want? Llama! Danny class. It's just, it almost as soon as you walk in.
But it's Oh, I don't know, man. Like, I just like to be crazy with the kids. I like to be a little bit spontaneous, and like half the time I just start singing, and I just no idea what the lyrics are gonna be.
And you and I would nurture two very different types of students. So
Yeah.
that's always an interesting mix, like the teenage class that we shared last year, where you would teach them for a week and I would teach them for a week. Like after being with you, I think they were probably much more high energy, and after being with me, they're probably much more like sedated. I hope they liked it.
However, like that class was fantastic, and like when they finished, like I mean, it was a really sad day,
Yeah.
and like we took them so far. However, I mean, I would start my lesson and I would start talking to them, and you know, I'd learn about their days, and then all of a sudden a topic will come up about I don't know, like using helicopters in the Northern Territories to herd cattle. And then 45 minutes later, I would finish with how much I hate Coldplay. Like, it was just the power rant about why it's hard to live in Shenzhen during the summer, and you go from sweating to shower to sweating to shower
To freezing on the subway.
to freezing on the subway. Like, maybe we
To
should.
fighting students' parents about the air conditioning temperature,
Oh,
stealing remote controls.
Fighting the TAs about the air conditioning temperature.
Okay.
The student says, "I'm cold." They turn it off.
Bring a jacket.
Yeah. I actually had a small star, a very young student, start crying. She's wearing like a school sweater, the bright yellow sweater. She's in elementary school, and she's wearing a bright sweater, and she just started crying and bawling her eyes out and talking in Chinese. And then the TA finally like listens to her, and I was like, "Okay, so what's the problem?" "She's too hot." It's like, she's been crying for 5 minutes about being too hot, and she's not taking off her sweater.
You will encounter some gaps of logic with the younger students.
It's quite amusing though. However, like I don't know, I had a bit of a long conversation with some of my students about how to survive Shenzhen in summer. Like where I come from, the weather is very mild, and like California, I mean it's not as mild, but it's not the same as Shenzhen.
It's not humid at all.
It's basically like swimming when you're walking. It's wet even when it's dry.
Well, I spent half my life in Georgia, the South, and it's really humid there. So I was prepared for humidity, but not this much. It's like being in a rainforest all day. It's just insane.
Do you feel like if you get angry about sweating that you sweat more? Because like when I shouldn't be sweating, like if I'm going into a class, it's like 8:30, but I've been outside for 4 seconds, or I'm stuck in an elevator that stops on every floor on the way down. Like I get angry that I'm getting hot, and I think by getting angrier, I get more like actually hot, and then I sweat more. So it's hard for me to relax in the summer. Like in the winter, I'm like, oh, this is nice, and then I get a little bit too cold. But I'd rather have a little bit of that than sweat rage.
Oh.
I've noticed lately that you sweat. Okay, you go outside, you start sweating. You go into the air conditioner, you keep sweating for about 15 minutes,
Yeah.
and you're freezing, and your body is still like producing it. And you're like, why am I not dry yet? Yeah, it's kind of.
Last week I decided I was going to start working out early in the morning and be more productive. So I woke up at 5:40 for 3 days in a row. I'm doing exercise at 6 in the morning. By 7:30, I need to take a shower, get ready for work, and I sweat through the entire shower. The water, you can make it too hot, but I can't make it cold enough. Like it's only mildly cold, or it's as cold as the pipes can be in the heat. And I'm afraid one day I'm just going to run out of water. I'm just going to like shrivel up like a raisin and just die.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. However, like I actually quite enjoy going out in Shenzhen's weather, like working up a massive sweat and then going home and just taking the longest shower. That takes 45 an hour long. Like you finish it and it's like an epic.
Oh, sorry, for a girl, that's a short shower.
There was that day that we biked like 35 kilometers.
From Lohu to Shuka.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, how do we explain that journey?
Guaranteed chafing.
Guaranteed chafing. Actually, we should probably explain. There's some system here that they've got, and it's an application called Mobike So there's all these push bikes all around, and you scan a code on the back of it, and it unlocks it, and you can ride it for as long as you want. So we took this as a challenge, and we tried to ride from one side of Shenzhen to the other. Now Shenzhen's one of the biggest cities in China.
Definitely one of the biggest cities in China. BBC article said it was about 11 million people as of last year.
And it's really long. It's not like a contained city. It's along the side of a coastline almost.
Like Beijing is completely different. Shanghai is very different because like Shanghai, it's all on the Pudong River, and it just kind of there's the central area, and then it just kind of sprawls out, and it's very sort of congested. However, Shenzhen is a lot more spaced out. So we tried to bike from one side to the other and succeeded. Except I think I almost crashed about 3 or 4 times.
If you don't have one near-death experience per mission, I feel like we've failed ourselves.
Well, it's easy for him to have a near-death experience. Or anyone following him.
What? It's not that bad.
Stephanie, go down the stairs with a bike. You've only been on one in the last 10 years.
I consider that normal behavior.
Completely unrelated, but we should probably get helmets for the next time. Just in case.
I like how you tried to con me. You strategically said it. You're like, look, we should get GoPros and we could ride around with them. Now, to mount the GoPros, we need helmets.
Yeah. I have to appeal to your sensibilities. I know. If I say safety, you're going to get all offended. Yeah.
Come on. Like, I've only broken half a dozen bones in my life. And, like, bones heal and... it's always nice to have a story.
No, he doesn't care. He walked in one day, said, I hurt my wrist, grabbed a bunch of tape and 2 chopsticks and made a splint.
Yeah.
Actually, I did something similar when I left Korea.
Tell that story.
Oh, okay. All right. So what happened is that I was working for this really, really bad company called Fine School in the south of Korea, this little town called Ulsan. And my boss was really terrible. My big major boss was really terrible. They basically treated me like something that they dug out of their ear. And eventually, they ended up taking a lot of money out of my bank account illegally, which they could. And so by this point, it had been 9 months and I'd had enough. So I decided, stuff this. I'm leaving. So I packed up all of my stuff in the middle of the night. Didn't have a visa to anywhere. Just decided, stuff it, let's go. Bought a ticket to Saigon. And completely forgot that I needed a letter of invitation. Trained from Ulsan to Busan, which is relatively close, maybe an hour and a half away. Got out to the airport with me and my then girlfriend. We went to check in, and it's about 2.5 hours before our flight. They said, look, sorry guys, we can't let you onto the plane. You need to get a letter of invitation. So we decided then and there that we weren't going to let this stop us. So we got on the phone to embassies, called absolutely everyone we possibly needed to, woke up half a dozen ambassadors, and generally we're terrible people. I managed to send a lot of money to different people to get this to happen. Anyway, 55 minutes later, I get a letter of invitation, and the airport layout was that there's a bottom floor, and this is where the check-in counters were. And there was a mezzanine floor above that where they had computers and printers and all that sort of other jazz. So it comes through. Kristen's now basically pleading with them to let us onto the plane, and that we're going to have letters of invitation. And it's about 2 minutes before they're going to stop doing check-in. It comes through. I print it out. I start running across this mezzanine floor. And then on the other side of it, to get down, there is this escalator. And in front of me is this elderly Korean man with a suitcase. And I'm yelling and I'm screaming and I need him to get out of the way so I can check in. And unfortunately, my Korean isn't good enough to be able to communicate with him. So I decided that the best thing to do was to jump over him and his bag on this escalator. Now, I hit the stairs, go ass over tit, and land up in this big heap of mangled body parts and trying my best to keep composed. However, when you stand up and part of your foot dislocates from the other, and there's just shoots of pain going up your legs into your spine, and that little place in your head where you've got to like try and contain yourself. It's very hard, and so there's this big sort of shriek of pain as I stand up, and I end up like basically crawling this bloody mess across this beautiful tile floor in this really nice airport, and I managed to slam the letters of invitation onto the desk, which currently at this point in time have my blood on them, as well as the stamp of approval. And they kind of touched it, and they actually ended up getting gloves to approve stuff. And I just kind of collapsed down the side in this mess of human being. Anyway, so they ended up giving me a couple of bags that they had, which I put covered over some of my limbs, and 2 stewardesses that helped me go through customs, which is good because they would have avoided my visa because I ran away from the job. And they got me onto the plane and they sat me down, and it was great because it was like China Southern, and so like once we got up to temperature, I was like, look, I need some water and I need some alcohol, and do you have any Nurofen? Sir, what's that? Oh, I don't know. You have me some chopsticks. And I ended up using a set of chopsticks, breaking them in half to make a makeshift splint for my leg, a bit of tape that they had on the plane at the time, and about 3 socks. It ended up becoming somewhat of a cast as well, and I walked off the plane onto the next one, and then I rode motorcycles around Southeast Asia with that mangled foot for about 4 weeks, I think.
Do you still have that foot?
Actually, there's a little bone that pokes up the side,
Okay.
but it's not that bad. Like, I've got worse injuries.
I want to go throw up. That was oh my god.
But it was a good trip. It was, I don't know, man. It's like a story that you have. It's ironically enough, we've been trying to like over intellectualize like most of the situations that we find ourselves in, and I tell a story about what the podcast is about.
I don't think anybody would be upset if you were like, and then I went to the hospital. I don't think that would ruin the story. I'd be like, good. So you can still walk and stuff.
Yeah, well, if he's so blasé about this, you can imagine that's not his worst injury story.
I can't handle that right now.
You just need like a little moment to contemplate what you've gone through. Seriously, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. I was able to walk, and it was a good trip. It was a good trip. Like, you know, I mean, anytime
Cathartic.
Yeah.
Mm.
Come on, you guys can't tell me that you haven't had close calls when getting onto public transport.
I was in Amsterdam in 2006, and I'd gone out and gotten really drunk the night before, and the next morning, hungover, walking toward a bus, like 2 guys are riding bicycles, and they come within like this close to my face. I was like, oh. And I turned around and I was like, thank God that was. And while I was saying that was close, I got hit by like the 3rd bike. White He went off. I went down. I'm like, oh, yep. Okay, well, that serves me right now.
Oh shit.
Well, I don't have any stories about almost or actually getting hit by anything. But Stairs and I have an issue with each other. So I was trying to get on the train so I could get to Hong Kong for a flight. And there was one of the security guys for the metro here was standing right next to the stairs. So I was like, okay, I'll go between him in this sort of small space, between him and the stairs, and just go down the stairs. Well, about 2 inches or an inch off of the ground is another piece of tile for the railing, and I trip on that and almost fall face first down marble stairs. Like, I literally missed it by about 1.5 inches. My hand was 1.5 inches away from the first step, and I was like, I almost had a panic attack. It was like, and that would not have been the first time I fell downstairs. And then this schmuck
Schmuck.
I'm going down the stairs with him at a metro station a little while later, and he basically grabs me and does the pretend fall thing. Ah!
Keep you on your toes. Yeah.
Well, that's exactly it. You know.
They call that general physical preparedness. That's what we train for.
I mean, that's the entire purpose. Yeah. I tell you what, I was in Beijing and like I slept in one morning, and like my bullet train from Beijing to Shanghai was, I think it was about an hour from the time that I woke up to the time that the train was leaving. And like if anyone knows Beijing, it's a pretty congested city.
That's true.
And this is probably about 7 o'clock in the morning. And I woke up and, I'm kind of terrified. And I was like, no, I'm not letting this beat me. Like, it's one of the world's biggest cities. I can get on this train. So I ended up throwing all of my stuff in my bag. I only had my ticket, my phone, and my wallet, and my passport on me. And everything else is in my bag. And I ran downstairs. I didn't even bother with the elevator. I was like running, and it was like on the 20th floor or something like that. Get down to the bottom, and I'm just this big pool of sweat as I jump into a taxi. Tell the guy to take me to the train station, and effectively in Chinese, I told him like, if you can get me there in half an hour, I will give you 100 kwai. And he drove like. He was like Michael Schumacher. Like, the lights were not an issue. Like, other cars were not an issue. Driving on the wrong side of the road was not an issue. Like, anything that you would consider to be, like, safe behaviour was not an issue. I spent half of the time in the back seat praying to whichever deity I tend to believe in at the time, holding the Jesus bar, which is that little handle at the top, and I'm just pressing the imaginary brake as we're getting like the witches from other cars.
We call it the oh shit handle.
Oh my god, there was some serious contemplations in terms of my life decisions, and I was hungover at the time as well, which didn't make things easier. Anyway, so I get about 15 minutes before my train is meant to go, and we pull up to the station, and I just throw him like just wads of chairman, like just all of the chairman that are in my wallet. He earned them. And I end up running, and there's this big long line, and this like queues in this train station are unbelievable. Like it's a massive train station, and there's a queue from like the security check-in all the way out there. And like if anyone's queued here, they know that it's not like a formulated line. It's like people straggling on the sides, and so I ended up saying sorry, and I managed to get through most of it. Threw my bag over the check-in, and then I apologised to the guy. I was like, oh, this is just my bag, I need to grab it. So I managed to get past it. And he didn't even check it. He was just like, oh, no, this guy's obviously made an accident. Must have fallen from the second floor. Like,
it's okay, I'm in a hurry.
And I literally ran from there all the way across like this massive tile floor. Like, the thing is, like, I think it must have been like a kilometre long. Like, it was massive. Well, maybe that's a little hyperbole. But get to the gate, swipe my card. They check my passport quickly, run down, and I got onto the train just as there's the beep 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 beep, and the doors closed, and then I just kind of collapsed in this big puddle of just like hungover destroyedness. And exhaustion.
And sweat.
And sweat, clearly. But
and what did you learn from all of this?
Throw cash at a taxi driver and pray to God you don't die.
Oh man,
disobey all the rules because you fucking want to. I don't care. Just do it.
Oh man, but that driver was just awesome. It was just ridiculous. Like there was this when they first developed like the gyroscope for cameras to stay stable, they wanted to test it, and they came up with this idea where they would attach it to the front of the fastest Ferrari at the time, and they'll get from one end of Stockholm to the other in 10 minutes. And they filmed this entire thing. It was called Goodaway in Stockholm. And this guy's literally driving onto sidewalks, and there's people jumping out of the way as he's going through cafes. Oh, yeah. And it's just ridiculous. No, this taxi driver wasn't too far off that.
Maybe China's like a giant training ground for professional street racers.
And stuntmen.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's the reason why no one's got like a lot of people just don't have the desire to do anything dangerous because it's like oh, it's just the daily life.
Well, I mean,
Like-
how many kids have you seen, like, come in to our school with IV drips and casts and stuff? One of my kids, he had the long scar with the little pinpricks. It means he had screws in his arm. And I was like, what happened? And he couldn't translate it, so his friend translated for him. So he's like, yeah, he walked out, and then the car came. It's like, wait, he was hit by a car? Yeah, and the kids all think this is totally normal.
Yeah. I mean,
I think I've spent enough time here that that's kind of rubbing off on me. Like, I will walk, like, cars are coming, and I will walk in front, like, he's probably going to stop. And, like, it's like, he's probably going to have to stop aggressively because I'm not moving. Like, I know if he steps on the brake full force, he might just not hit me. Like, it's become really, like, I'm just
you're just okay with
courting
about
disaster at this point. I'm like, fuck you, I don't care. Hit me, don't hit me. I'll get, like, sick leave. It should be fine.
I think, like, we've all spent time in Vietnam. Like, I think that's a training ground for, like, getting you used to traffic here. It's, like, you just gotta look at the other side of the road and just step out into, like, this wave of scooters going 100 miles an hour with just speed and commitment. Like...
I was just talking to myself the whole time I was there last month. It's going to be okay. No one's going to hit you. And I'm just saying it while I'm walking. Grace is like, is that for me or for you? I'm like, it's for me. Like, but if you want to say it's for you, that'll work too.
I remember my night coming in. I got in really late in Korea, so it's like straight from the U.S. First time, first few hours, and my driver and the other people on the road, and I've literally been in this country for an hour, and I'm going, I'm never driving here. It's I don't understand. Well, here, you know, they're gonna have. I've seen accidents and stuff, but for some reason in Korea it works. Everyone drives like a maniac, but nobody ever gets hit. It's really weird.
You should go to India. Driving down the road from New Delhi to Agra, and it's this main highway, and it's beautiful. Like it's paved. It's almost like the Swiss did it. Like it's stunning. And I'm having a conversation in the back of this car, and then all of a sudden we go violently one way, violently the other. Like the car's up on two wheels, and it's just because a cow decided he wanted to cross the road. And I'm sitting in the back just going, oh, like, please, we need to go to a bathroom somewhere quick. Like, this is not a good day for me.
I was in the Philippines. I was in Manila, getting away from the airport, and my friend picked me up with his family, and he's like, okay, so here's traffic here. There are no highways in this country, and so here's how traffic works. If we're stopped, the lines don't matter. So they make, in like a 3-lane road, they make about 6 different lanes worth of cars when they're stopped at a light or stopped in traffic. And it's normal, and people are walking through the lines of cars, selling things like teddy bears, and it's not just drinks. Like, they sell electronics as they walk through. It's supposed to be the worst traffic in the world, actually. It's supposed to be in the Philippines.
I'll say overall, I'm pretty pleased with Chinese traffic. I haven't seen too many like serious accidents. Like I heard about them a lot in the States, and I might just not hear about it here. But every taxi I get in, I know going to work previously, every driver I had who got on the highway never once touched the brake. It was like gas, full throttle, and like if you are weaving in and out of cars, just take your foot off the gas and maybe coast for half a second. But you just have to have like complete and utter faith in them to know that they probably don't want to kill themselves or you in the process.
It is a completely different driving style. Like, you know, back, I would say in the West, like, you know, we have a lane and we stick to it. You know, every, like, corners are done with, like, it's slow, and, like, we sort of ease into a corner and we turn the wheel, you know, slowly as we go around. And, you know, when we accelerate, we accelerate slow, and then when we brake, we sort of brake slow. So it's as gentle as humanly possible. Here it's not. Like, the only way I can describe it is, like, it's a binary style. Like, it's either ones or zeros. It's, like, on or off. Like, they kind of stamp the accelerator, then stamp the brake in this binary style.
It seems like everyone is acting under the principle that if you do what is best for you at that moment, everyone will adjust to that. Like, if you can cut somebody off, cut them off. If someone's in front of you, maybe don't hit them. But if you have the opportunity to go, you take it. Like, I've always, when I'm driving in the U.S., I'll stop and let people go ahead, and someone waves, you know, oh, no, you first, it's nice. Like, that never happens there. Like,
Depends on where you are, though, because if you go to, like, LA and San Diego, they're the only people on the road that matters.
Okay. Maybe that's a big city thing.
And then it's I loved living in San Diego except for one part. It rains so rarely there that when there's like that mild misty rain, traffic goes stop and go on the highway. They don't know how to deal with it. So it's always like I'm the only person on the road. That's the mentality for Southern California.
Yeah, actually, the reverse of this is actually quite funny. Like we've got a PA that progress advisor who went through to the UK, and she came back and she was like, "Look, it was really lovely there. It's not because the people were lovely. But everyone is very polite. You know, everyone will let you in." And it was very strange because you kind of saw that like everyone here was very kind and very friendly and very giving, but there was very little politeness and very little courtesy. Versus when she went over there, it was the opposite.
Yeah, I think you pay attention to different things when you travel. Like I noticed people in Vietnam being exceedingly nice and patient and friendly and very accommodating at all times.
Yeah, no, I agree. Actually, I found the Northern Thais were really accepting of me. I rode a motorcycle around the Mae Hong Son track, which is effectively northern Thailand and like the bottom of Burma around like the Shan states, which if you know anything, like that's the hub of the Golden Triangle. And I broke down outside of this township called Mae Sering, which is really small, and I probably mispronounced that. And like I'm walking this battered motorcycle with all my gear on it, and these Buddhist monks come walking down the street from their monastery, and all I can say is hello, and effectively, which is have you eaten rice yet? And then they give me a response which didn't really mean anything to me, and they looked at my bike and they're like, oh, effectively like it's flat, and I was like, well, yeah, it's only flat on the bottom, and they like kind of gestured for me to come with them, and we ended up just walking down this random track into the middle of the jungle for about half an hour, and I just kind of trusted them. We eventually get to their monastery, and they've got someone there that's been working on bikes and stuff, and he fixes it for me. Doesn't want any money, doesn't want anything. Like they give me lunch. We all kind of just sit around, not really talking, but it was comfortable, and it was this very sort of hospitable life that they had, and it was wonderful to be a part of it, even for like 20 minutes or half an hour walking down a random dirt track thinking like, okay, should I say something? No, I can't say something.
Is that something you find that happens to you more frequently when you're traveling outside of your home country? Or did you find that back when you were in New Zealand?
No, it's actually, I remember breaking down in a car when I was like 16. I was driving back from a ski field in this old Ford Escort panel van. This thing was dirty. Like, honestly, you started it up, it sounded like an angry Geordie, like, you want some? And it just fired, and it was terrible. But anyway, like, I ripped up part of the exhaust, and I had no idea what had happened. And anyway, this local farmer had like dragged me back to his farmhouse. I ended up reading to his daughter, and they gave me dinner, and he filled me up with gas, and he gave me a big pot of coffee so that I could survive on the way back to my hometown, and it was lovely. Like, yeah. But I just kind of find, like, everywhere I go, if the shit hits the fan, there's always someone who wants to help just because they want to get that, good soul boner that everyone's,
Good.
everyone's aspiring to have.
Do you think that has anything to do with the attitude you present to people? Like, I know lots of people who might find themselves in similar situations, and perhaps because they haven't traveled as much, or they're just frustrated. Like, if you and I encountered the same hassle, I might just lose my mind, whereas you might be like, oh, it's fine. And like, the people might be more receptive to you, like, oh.
Yeah, you're very much, when something bad happens, usually, at least not when it comes to another person, but when something bad happens to you, like bad luck, you're usually like, meh. It's like, oh, well, I'm in this situation now. There's no anger or frustration really involved in it for you, I think.
You should
Or
have...
very little, at least outwardly.
You should have seen me trying to hook up my internet the other day exclusively in Mandarin, and it was not a good day for me. Honestly, it was like 45 minutes, and this girl was speaking so quickly. I was like, sweetheart, look, this is my second language, and it's really difficult. Like, I understand every second word that you say.
That's impressive.
It's, nah, not really.
It's impressive if you don't speak it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like it was incredibly difficult, and by the end of it, I was so burnt out. I just kind of sat in the ground outside. I was just like, I just can't deal with life anymore. Like, please, just leave me alone.
Yeah, that's one thing. It's not that I didn't expect it, but I guess I wasn't really prepared to be in this situation, especially quite so often, is when you don't speak the language, everything is harder than it should be. Going to the doctor is harder than it should be, and sometimes like getting something to eat. Like the first thing that I ate for my first dinner in Korea, my first night living in another country, was Oreos from the convenience store because I couldn't recognize half of the things in the convenience store. I couldn't figure out where to go, what to do, how much my money was worth, and I was exhausted, and I was like, I just can't. And even like going to the same restaurant twice can still be a lesson in two completely different levels of I don't know what the fuck to do.
Oh, but that's like anywhere you go though. Like for the first day, 2-3 days, it's just an adjustment period. Like you've got to like recalibrate your mind in terms of what value things have, and also like the strategies that you use to acquire what you need.
Yeah, it's like switching to a different mode in your brain. Like
Yeah.
It's a very jarring sensation, but I become addicted to it.
But the first timers always have it the hardest, I think, because there's knowing what to expect, and then there's actually experiencing it, and I think that's a lot like our job. Teaching in different countries, you get a lot of people that do it for a year or less because they can't handle it. Even if they do their research, there's still that actual firsthand experience, and it's handling it and figuring it out and translating it and not being too stiff in what you think things should be, I think.
And now we've come full circle to the place at which we began.